up to attend this webinar today. There will be a replay, of course, so if you were not able to watch it but are watching the replay, thank you so much for showing up for that. I am here today to discuss how you can align your sustainable values with your yoga career. So this is before we get started, I'd love to actually know where people are calling in from, or tuning in from rather. I am tuning in from Southern Oregon here in Central Point. Anyone else in Oregon? Well, please keep updating us here in the chat with where you're tuning in from, because it'd be great to see where everyone, oh, Washington, D.C., North Carolina, Iowa, wonderful. We do have another Southern Oregon person here, New York, fantastic. Central California, Atlanta, Philadelphia, fantastic, awesome. So good to have you all. I'm so happy to see all these people interested in discussing sustainability and how it can relate to your yoga career. So let's dive in. I will go ahead and pull up the presentation. We got Bay Area, nice, Knoxville, Virginia, North Carolina, more California, Gold Beach, what's up? All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen and then we will hop right into the presentation and get started. So hopefully you guys can see everything here. Okay. And I'll go ahead and minimize that. Okay, voila. So we already discussed, we're going to be talking about sustainable values and how that relates to your yoga career. So first, let me introduce myself. I had a lovely introduction from Shannon. Thank you so much. Yes, I am a wellness designer. I'll talk about what that is a little bit later. I'm also a yoga instructor. I've been practicing yoga for about 25 years now. And I am lucky enough to call myself an entrepreneur that has been able to marry the two halves of myself being design and yoga. So my mission in everything that I do career-wise is to promote self-care for others and tips for sustainable living. So these are the most common ways that you can get a hold of me, but we'll see that again at the end of the presentation. So let's look at what we're going to discuss today in this talk, the roadmap, if you will, for the webinar. First, I'll give you a little bit about my background, what brought me to wellness design, and then I'll get deeper into exactly what is wellness design. Then we'll reveal 9 of my favorite wellness design principles, and then we'll look at some examples of how I've applied those principles over the course of my design career. Then at the end, there'll be some exclusive discounts, my contact information again. And then there'll be time for Q&A, at least 10 minutes, maybe about 15 minutes. So please take notes during the presentation and save those questions for the end. We'll definitely get to them. So my background, I have an architectural degree. I also have a master's in interior architecture. So I was at the University of Oregon for a very long time. And in that time frame, I found yoga. I discovered yoga at a young age. And I absolutely evolved both of those practices ever since that time. So it's been several decades now. And I went out for certifications in 2012 when I became Vinyasa yoga certified. Then I dove into aerial yoga and gentle aerial yoga. If you haven't tried it, you absolutely must. And then finally, in the course of graduating from design school, still practicing yoga, I was working at an architecture firm and lugging my heavy mat to work on my bike every day, going to yoga at lunch or after work. And I kept noticing that all of the studios I would frequent had this really persistent storage problem. And I definitely wanted to keep my mat at my local studio. And I offered to build them a solution to their yoga mat storage problem so that I could actually house mine there permanently and have kind of claim it as my own. So in that process, I decided to start Mache. Mache is the world's first yoga storage company. And I attended the Y Combinator startup school to learn more about business, as I knew nothing about it going into that um, endeavor. So here at Mache, formerly known as To Yoke Design, at Mache Design, we practice wellness design. So wellness design can come in a lot of different forms. At Mache, we have products and we design spaces that enhance well-being and harmonize the natural world within your interiors. So we've worked with people like health conscious businesses, residential. We build eco-conscious furniture. We've worked with yoga studios, health clinics, farm-to-table restaurants, biodynamic vineyards. The list goes on and on. Anyone who has a strong sustainable value set and is looking to find ways to extend those values into their built environment. So wellness is the expression of, or wellness design rather, is the expression of health and well-being goals into your space. How do we do that? Well, Mache tackles that by serving the yoga community specifically. So I was looking at the Be Yogi mission recently and noticing some beautiful parallels there to our mission, which is to help organize your yoga business so that you can maximize your yoga business. And there's a lot of ways that our organizational tools and sustainable design can help lift up and maximize your yoga business. But I was really inspired to see that Be Yogi's mission is very similar to support yoga teachers on their journey to become better teachers and grow their businesses. So when we look at the concept of self-care, which all of us are interested in, devoting parts or if not our whole lives to the subject, it's often the case that people are not pulling sustainability or their sustainable values that they already carry into that discussion and into that framework. I like to think of sustainability and self-care as truly two sides of the exact same coin. You really can't have one without the other. And we explore all the different layers of sustainability and self-care, how they relate in a blog that we maintain on the Mache website. And this is an excellent resource for yoga teachers, yoga business owners, as a lot of the content there is relatable to your business and to the wellness journey in general. So you can think of it as articles where how can we detoxify our yoga practice? How can we detoxify celebrations like removing plastics from Day of the Dead, things like that. Really fun tools, one layer at a time, so it's not overwhelming. Feel free to check that out. And then, ultimately, why did I pick the yoga industry to focus wellness design principles and my practice on? That was because I'm in love with yoga and I have been for a very long time. I've visited many, many studios and I'm also a small business owner and I 2 times over now. And I love supporting that dual community of yoga business owners. I'm also an interior designer that specializes in sustainability and wellness, and I have learned along the way how incredibly toxic yoga is. The materials that yoga has implemented as its keystone materials are inherently very toxic. So I like to say, friends, don't let friends practice with plastic if at all avoidable. So when looking at aligning your sustainable values with your yoga career, definitely look at your props and the tools that you use to maintain your self-care. So our biggest offenders in the yoga industry tend to be the cheapy yoga mat that we all start out with from Target for 20 bucks is absolutely toxic. It's made from PVC, polyvinyl chloride, which is nicknamed the poison plastic. Isn't that lovely? Doesn't that make you want to breathe deeply on that? And it is also the #1 most used material for yoga mats. So this is a huge epidemic, and they aren't going anywhere. PVC does not biodegrade very easily. These mats are going to be around for a very long time. So not only are they not breaking down, but in the process of their life, they are off-gassing chemicals. So EVA foam would be the next big culprit. You see that in the squishy part of our shoes, the sole part. You see that in those puzzle mats that kids play on. You also very much see it in yoga blocks. And you see it in foam rollers sometimes. That foam has been banned in European countries for its carcinogenic properties, specifically related to birth defects and hormonal disruptions. So that's a pretty big deal when you look at how many of us rely on those types of props in our practice. And then lastly, of course, yoga apparel. We can't have this conversation without talking about yoga apparel. Not only is yoga apparel often made of plastic, which has a serious health implication when it comes to hormone disruption, as it can leach chemicals into your bloodstream through sweat, but it also poses an issue with microplastics in the environment through laundering in the wash. That is a huge problem with microfiber anything. So those microfiber towels we all use, anything that is microfiber, you want to think twice, because it's not so much about the off-gassing of those products as it is the degrading of them into the waterways. So big, scary elements here when it comes to the materials we surround ourselves with. Hormone disruption, I mentioned that earlier. Immune disruptors. I have an autoimmune disorder that I can't help but wonder might be related to some of my previous behaviors early on in my yoga practice. Asthma, any type of respiratory issue, even cancer. And then, of course, I mentioned the pollution. When anyone says that something's made of recycled bottles and it is going to be on your skin, that is still plastic that is leaching chemicals into your bloodstream. So although it might seem like you're making a sustainable choice there, you really want to look at both sides of the coin, not just the sustainable side, but the self-care side. So the average indoor air quality is 2 to 5 times and sometimes 100 times more polluted than outdoor air. This is a really hard stat to believe, and because it's a gut punch, and we all live the majority of our time indoors, like 90% of our waking hours indoors and sleeping. So it's a lot. But, we can start to use wellness design principles to mitigate these issues. And that the pollution is because of the off-gassing chemicals from the products in our interiors, also from people who are spraying chemicals on them. So let's look at what we do about it. Wellness design principles, there are more than 9, but we're going to discuss 9 today. And we're going to start with that indoor air quality one because of those off-gassing chemicals. So we can't get rid of every single piece of plastic in our interior or, finish on wood that might be off-gassing. There's a lot of little hidden elements in our homes and in our businesses and in our studios. But what we can do is we can try to eliminate the biggest culprits, identify where we think the most of these gaseous elements are being emitted from, and try to replace them with sustainable, natural, non-off-gassing alternatives. But we can also get into a nice routine, a habit of flushing our indoor air. We don't do that often enough as Americans, as people, as business owners, as, homeowners. It really is important to not only have good air filtration systems, but to regularly move outdoor air through your space in a flushing like manner. And there's lots of different types of passive ventilation strategies you can implement there. But you might also want to look at some air purifying plants. They don't, it's not going to solve your entire indoor air problem, but if you have enough of them, you could definitely make a dent in the areas that you might feel are most egregious. Then we look to natural light. So before we even get into electric light, it's all about maximizing natural light. The beauty of that is hidden in the circadian rhythm and our connection to the cycles of the spinning of the earth. It's a timeless, integrated knowledge in ourselves. And to bring that into an indoor space in a very conscious way is an incredibly powerful wellness design principle. So try to reduce your reliance on electric lighting and try to celebrate the shifting of the light. For instance, you can use candles. Candlelit yoga in the evenings is so nice. Help people connect with their circadian rhythm, as most of us, as you know, are linked to our blue light screens at night. But when we do use electric lighting, let's be smart with it. So electric lighting can be really evocative when it comes to sparking emotion. With today's electric lighting, you can dim it. You can get really energy efficient LEDs. You can have different color ways associated with those LEDs. Try to stay away from the blue light. So try to be in the 2500 K temperature realm, nothing over 3000, unless you're seriously, trying to get some work done library style. You want to stay in the warmer tones of LED. Then we look at mindful materials. So this is where I spend most of my time obsessing about the content of materials. There are so many beautiful natural materials made right here in the United States that you can work with as a business owner, as a designer. Just make sure that you make the right calls and investigate the contents of those materials to ensure that they don't have hidden off-gassing elements within them. Also try to celebrate the natural flaws in things. Natural materials are like natural beings, like people. They come in all different shapes and sizes, and there's a uniqueness to it and a way to connect to nature and our uniqueness by celebrating those natural flaws. When it comes to acoustics, this is another area where maybe your customers won't feel or see, they're not going to see potentially these strategies, these design strategies happening in the background, but they are absolutely going to feel it. And the next two are related to that, acoustics and thermal comfort. So acoustics, especially in a yoga environment, you don't have to be a yoga studio owner. You could be a teacher that teaches from home, maybe live streams. Acoustics are incredibly important there. But definitely in the studio environment, when you're helping shape someone's experience from a busy world and transitioning them into a safe space to practice and then back out. So acoustics can be highly toxic, tons of foam in the acoustic world. You want to stay away from that and lean into foam when you need to use it. Lean into those recycled ingredients. Felt is an incredible acoustic absorber. Wood, anything that has depth to it. So, very, very smooth surfaces like metal and stone will bounce sound through a space. So you want to have fuzzy, I always like to think of it as fuzzy materials around. Plaster is one of those, beautiful, hard, but fuzzy-like materials to break up some of that noise. Then from a thermal perspective, this means your temperature, how you feel in the space. Sustainability, I'm not sure if I saw anyone from Arizona, but that's where I'm from originally. And in Arizona, people run from their cars to building to building to building, and they just live in circulated air, AC. Air conditioning is a very big threat to indoor air quality, and you want to be extremely careful to change filters constantly, whether you're working with your air purifier or your HVAC system. You want to make sure that that air that's being recirculated is actually being cleaned. But also try again to rely less on those systems. Look for spaces where you can locate your business that have natural ventilation opportunities. So cross ventilation, being a window open on one side of the room and then one on the other side so you can get that cross vent. Or stack ventilation, that's the same concept but more vertically between floors. So try to offload those environmental toxins that are going to undoubtedly collect in the space without making your visitors or your customers, your clients uncomfortable in the process. And then the final three we'll look at here in terms of wellness design principles is you might have heard of the term biophilia. It is quite simply bringing nature indoors, finding cues, and sometimes just literally putting plants inside that would elicit the emotions and relationships that human beings have with nature. So you can see this exemplified in the examples in the below of, a logo of a leaf that has been inscribed into custom furniture. But we also used air purifying plants in this project to bring in some of that biophilia goodness. What this also helps accomplish for human beings is it allows human beings to counteract some of this man-made, fast-moving technological world that we live in. So we are basically living in moving through boxes all the time. We're sitting at a box, we're living in a box, we're working in a box, we drive around in little boxes, and bringing some of those curves, some of that organic beauty that nature exemplifies so brilliantly into your boxy spaces will do wonders to help your mind-body connection to your, not only yourself, but to the space itself. It's all about energy. When we talk about energy, it's really interesting to also then discuss ergonomics. Ergonomics seems like this kind of stuffy science in terms of how to orient the body for, maximum comfort while you're working or performing repetitive tasks. But I like to think of it in terms of chi or prana and opening those channels that we do when we're practicing asanas as a way of kind of designing asanas in your work environment. So if you work in a yoga studio, how can you find ways to make the most common tasks in that space more ergonomic or more comfortable? So often this has to do with supporting our joints. Maybe it's a fatigue mat, some kind of cushion. Fatigue mats can be made out of recycled PVC yoga mats. FYI, good way to reuse one. But there's other ways too, with chairs and tables that have height differential that you can manually adjust, and giving people that ability and control to shape their space for their own needs is incredibly powerful when it comes to wellness design. So that can be thermal comfort as well. When we're in a space that doesn't have operable windows, it has windows, but we can't open them. We can't actually interact with that outdoor energy. It can feel very trapped, and it takes the joy and the empowerment out of the user of that space. So with ergonomics, with providing operable windows, we create this kind of canvas on which the user can paint their own experience and create their own level of comfort. And that in itself is sustainable. We're trying to build sustainable companies. We're trying to create longevity in our businesses. And we, most interiors, whether that's a residential space or a commercial space, are ripped out every 7 years or less and redone. So, being someone who's designed a lot of those spaces, it's it's a bit another gut punch because I know that there's a lot of beautiful materials that are going in the trash constantly. So how can we design our businesses for that long-term adaptability and flexibility? That could be a spatial flexibility if you have a physical space where you design furnishings that can go with you when you outgrow that space. If you need a larger space or to downsize, you can sell items as opposed to things being built in and, locked to the wall such that they would have to be ripped out and thrown out at the end of its life. One good example of that was a studio we worked with in Sacramento that had multiple studios, and they really needed props to migrate from studio to studio to meet their class needs. So we created these cabinets for yoga blocks that were like these little mobile cabinets that had magnets so they could snap together. You could rip them apart and send one cabinet in one studio and the other cabinet in the other studio. And then when COVID hit, that company had to downsize and they were able to take all the cabinets into one studio and, evolve their business with their assets and all of the sustainable strategies that they've already invested in. So we would be remiss to have this conversation without talking a little bit about the magic of ancient wisdom that informs wellness design. So, Vastu is the predecessor of Feng Shui and is the Indian architectural practice for spatial design. They emphasize the principles of specific layouts related to a grid and astrology, geography, your exact orientation on the planet. Ground preparation is a part of that, space arrangement, as I mentioned, and geometries. Really cool stuff. Definitely no time to go into it here, but I highly recommend you look into it if you are not familiar. And then compare that with what you learn about Feng Shui. Feng Shui, it has got some overlaps. There's definitely some similarities, very interesting crossovers related to energy flow, specifically with that thinking about the earth as a whole and the energy lines of the earth as a whole. But it's definitely more about balancing those energies and sort of moving natural elements around your space into specific locations to help promote the best energy flow. So two amazing, just incredibly rich disciplines to research if you're interested. Then, of course, Yama, number one, ahimsa. Ahimsa is the meaning of it is non-injury or non-violence in Sanskrit. And the central principle is that we should do no harm to ourselves, to others. And when I look around at the yoga community and the self-care wellness community at large, I see so much hidden harm happening in the way of toxic materials and polluting people and the planet. So this is our opportunity to look to those ancient wisdom nuggets and try to evolve their meaning and apply it in this modern sense to our modern lives. So let's look at how do we do that in wellness design and practice. So number one, reduce your plastic footprint. We can do this personally, of course. I think we're all kind of on this path of working on it. It's an endless endeavor because plastic is ubiquitously everywhere. But in yoga specifically, start with the yoga props. Anything that's going to be touching your skin, anything that's going to be near your mouth and nose as you're breathing deeply and connecting with your higher self, make sure that that is not a plastic material that could be off-gassing chemicals and undermining your self-care practice. Next, you want to tackle operations. So looking at your business as a whole, where do you see the most waste happening in terms of plastic waste? So, this could be if you have a lot of retail packaging. And, when you get that retail packaging, you have to throw away a bunch of plastic as a result. You might want to rethink those vendors. This could be paperless check-in. There's a lot of different ways to reduce waste, but specifically plastic in your business. So you just want to do an audit and start with the biggest factors, the biggest amounts of waste first. Then you'll want to look to declutter and organize your yoga business. So this is perfect for both that at-home yoga teacher or, at-large yoga teacher and the yoga studio or wellness movement studio owner, because we all deal with this yoga clutter problem. I have it at home. I have it in the studio. In the studio, it's much more exponential, as you can see in this crazy before and after picture. So imagine the emotional impact that you're giving your customers if they show up to your studio and the image on the left is what they see. This precarious pile of yoga props that, first off, a lot of these are student mats. And that's their personal property that's being squished up and, kind of abused here in this photo. So when we declutter our spaces and we really create a calm environment for the mind to start to decompress and transition into that yoga mentality and that yoga space, then you create a decluttered mind so much faster. I can't imagine trying to find peace in the scenario on the left there, when the scenario on the right is so fast to grab your mat, get to your spot in that studio, and start to take those deep breaths that get you into your center. So your business and your students deserve that stress-free style flow, and we'd be happy to help you explore how best to make that happen in your space. First, you might also want to rethink your spatial layout. So this can be done, of course, if you're designing a studio from scratch. This is absolutely the first step. However, if you are in that audit phase of an existing business, there might still be an opportunity to rethink how people move through your space. There is, traffic flow is like energy flow, like prana. You can look to see where the knots are. Where is the energy building up and not being able to be released? So those are the bottlenecks in your business when it comes to energy flow. And you want to relieve those bottlenecks by designing areas of interest to draw people into, disparate areas and kind of like decompress that congestion. But you can also, again, look to Feng Shui elements and Vastu arrangements for some inspiration there of how to move energy better through your space. Speaking of moving energy, that leads us right back into that airflow opportunity. So in yoga studios, wow, this is such a big deal. Not only are a lot of yoga studios practicing the hot yoga style these days, where they are, needing to pump a bunch of heat into the space and then quickly exhaust it for possibly a non-heated class, afterwards. That is a huge energetic load to be heating and cooling and heating and cooling. If at all possible, to do any of that process in a natural way through cross ventilation, stack ventilation, user operated mechanisms, so students don't have to wait for business owners to help them get comfortable, that would be the way to go. So this is an example of a studio in Portland where they had a very large opening door to exhaust the entire studio to a central courtyard. Every day they were able to do that, which helped tremendously in getting rid of those off-gassing chemicals that can tend to build up over time. So it's not like, oh, you get the yoga block in there and all of a sudden I'm sick. No, these are things that take a very long time seeping in like little homeopathic toxins day by day until the room is just filled with the pollutant. So it takes a while and it is very hard to perceive. So another way that you can, this is a great, I love this strategy in terms of bringing wellness design into your business. Incorporate your community on the project in the spirit of the project. So, and you probably have a community posting area if you do have a wellness business, a physical location. In that posting area, toot your own horn, share with your community the strategies that you might already be doing that are under the radar or just haven't had enough time to share that in a meaningful way. Put it up there and engage the community with your sustainable strategies, perhaps even involving them. So you can have community recycling areas. You can encourage people to pitch in on challenges to reduce waste or reduce people driving to your classes. So that kind of leads us to the what I call planet perks, which could be rewards that you set up specifically for whatever, sustainable tenets you want to hold dear in your business. So that could be for bicyclists if you're in an urban area. That could be promoting people getting to your studio without the use of carbon. So that could also be mass transit. That's an excellent reward. Bringing your own water bottle and cutting down on those little paper cups at the water filling station is another opportunity for a gold star. Rewarding people with brief showers. I still haven't quite figured out a delicate way of how to approve that one, but I'm sure we have some creative people in the bunch that might have some ideas. Please drop it in the chat if you do. And then, of course, I think it's really important for us to continue to educate our customers and students about the principles of yoga. So using this as an opportunity to teach the principles of ahimsa and share that discussion and see what comes out of it. So when it comes to designing your business, you don't have to start from scratch. It's not a full redesign and it shouldn't feel overwhelming, right? That's why the Wellness Onion blog that we maintain tackles these issues kind of one layer at a time because it can be very overwhelming. But I am also here to offer you a great deal to connect with me if you do want to pick my brain about a specific part of your business that perhaps you don't feel great about when it comes to aligning with your sustainable values. I'd be happy to talk to you and see if there isn't an elegant and affordable solution that might alleviate that pain point for you. And then you can better celebrate your values more openly with your community and feel great about it in the process. So we have two limited time offers for all people who have attended this webinar. 20% off all of our Mache storage. So Mache is working with both at-home yogis and studios to provide organization for yoga mats, blocks, straps, soon bolsters, pillows, meditation pillows, hand weights, all the goodies that come with trying to stay healthy and well. So 20% off site-wide for Mache, and then 50% off design consultation with me. So that would be a 90-minute call, and I'll send you an intake form prior to the call so that you can organize all of your thoughts and we can be sure to tackle your biggest concerns during that experience. Here is my contact information for anyone who would like to connect after the webinar. As I said, I just literally love talking about wellness and design any day, all day long. So please holler at me at any one of these ways here. And if you happen to be in Oregon, Washington, California, or Idaho, then you're within our little bubble here of being able to meet easily in person. So give me a shout out, and I'd love to talk about your yoga business and see if there's any way that me or Team Mache can help you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I would love to open up the discussion now to Q&A. I'm hoping that we have some really good questions in the mix here. So let me know what, Shannon, if you see anything.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Brienne. We do have a few questions, so we'll get started with our Q&A. How does keeping rolled mats better? They don't air, I believe is the question.
Yeah, so right, I know what you mean. So this is a question we get often from people who practice hot yoga. It's the how do I dry this mat problem? Because they're cumbersome and big and weird. And like once you get it all wet, what are you doing with this thing? If you roll it up, it's gonna get potentially stuck together and not dry effectively. So all of our storage solutions for yoga mats have that opening on the top and bottom. Even if it looks like it's closed when it goes into the yoga tube, for instance, we have a large breathing hole at the bottom and enough space on the interior diameter so that the mat can sort of like expand once you drop it into the tube and have that airflow all the way around. I agree. I love the idea of airflow from the top and bottom, all around, all the sides. And we'll continue to do that, especially with studio storage, because in the studio realm, it's an even bigger challenge to keep things clean, dry, and ready all the time.
Awesome. Another question, what is a non-toxic yoga apparel? So confusing. Looks like we are always wrong.
Yeah, great question. So I am on the hunt for this one. This is the big one. Last year, last February, I did a huge purge of my whole wardrobe. And my goal was that I had to get rid of every article of clothing that wasn't 50% or more natural materials. So hemp, I didn't really have any silk, but cotton, linen, wool, that was it. And then the piles were ridiculous. It was just unbelievable how much I had to get rid of. So much polyester. And honestly, it was a lot of yoga clothes. It was primarily yoga apparel. And then I started looking like, well, what am I going to wear? How am I going to go to yoga now? And it is incredibly difficult. There are some people out there making fibers out of plant-based materials. We've got bamboo, that's got some stretch to it. Cotton is a nightmare when it comes to getting wet. If you sweat, it has no bounce back. So there is going to be, until we, technologically get there in the apparel industry with, perfectly chemical-free workout gear, there's going to be a certain amount of elasticity plastic in there, and you just want to minimize it. So shoot for the gear that has shoot for the companies that are making big strides towards trying to move the needle in the fashion industry there, because it is a huge undertaking. And even if they're not 100% there today, those are the leaders that are going to be there tomorrow. So start shopping with them, start, reviewing their clothing, giving them feedback. Together as a yoga community, we need to move this entire industry forward.
Awesome. Another question we have is, what can I do for my yoga space on a low budget, 5K? What would I prioritize to maximize my sustainability?
Good question. I would love to talk to you about that. I would need to know a little bit more about your space. $5,000 is something that you can make a huge difference with in a smaller space, absolutely. But it might be a harder thing to do with a really sweeping studio. So there's a lot of factors at play there, but I would first stress this is kind of a trapping of people who get excited about a design across the board, not just yogis. They want to sort of jump into decor and, like, how's it going to be? It's going to be cute and like get into all that. There'll be time for that. That's not your first dollar. Spend your first dollars on making sure that the energy, the flow is working. So the spatial layout, the props, the quality of things that people are going to be actually touching and interacting with. That's not your sign. That's not your, fun chandelier in the locker room. Like, start with the things that people are literally going to touch. These are the things that people remember. We're tactile human beings. And those are the foundation of your business. Then you can start to add things. I would also say before decor or any type of, you know, uh, like flair being brought into the space, lean into plants. Let plants be the beautiful, majestic pieces of art that they are. If you have daylight ability to actually cultivate plants in your space, do it. People will sing, their hearts will sing when they're in your space because they will feel connected to their natural selves.
Awesome. We have another question. If I sign up for a consultation, how long do you advise the meeting would be?
Great question. So usually they're about 90 minutes to 2 hours. And that's why we do that preamble where I will send you a link to an intake form because you could easily spend 2 hours just kind of getting to know someone in the project. And I'd like to be able to spend that 90 minutes to 2 hours providing you as much valuable design expertise as I possibly can. So the intake form is your opportunity to spend as long as you want ahead of time, giving me as much detail, links, photographs, descriptions. I provide a list of questions that will cue you to start thinking about all those elements. And that way we can just dive right in.
Awesome. A question from Kelly. Hi, on the question of air quality, why do studios insist on burning incense? Is there a tactful and convincing way to mention that it's unhealthy, especially as someone with asthma?
Oh, that is such a good question. And or comment. The whole thing is a something I think about a lot. Yeah, that happens. And I agree with you. I think it is not appropriate for a public setting unless there has been prior consent from the group, which isn't the case often with yoga studios. I see it often as like a smudging between classes, and I understand where they're coming from, but I agree. The idea of burning incense at all should be coming with the concept of then clearing your space from all of that smoke and air particle after the clearing. I've heard once too that you kind of smudge to get rid of the bad energy, and then you use sound to fill the space with the new energy. So you think there'd be that middle step there. So smudge, get rid of bad energy, then flush with fresh air. Then plant the seed of your sound vibration to fill that space with the new beginning, if that makes sense. And I don't know how to bring that up to business owners. That's a really astute point. I think honestly, just being straightforward about your asthmatic condition, you're not alone. There are so many people with respiratory issues that I can only imagine there'd be someone else nearby who feels very grateful that you said something. So I wouldn't feel shy at all about just communicating your needs with the right yoga studio. They should be there to support you.
Awesome. Question from Melanie. What would you recommend for a traveling yogi? I need to go travel with over 20 blocks.
That's, yeah, I've been there. That is such a funny scene at the airport, the traveling yoga teacher. Yeah, I'm on it. I can tell you I'm on it. There's nothing on the market right now that I would say is the straight up go-to. The one that I think could fit, technically fit all of your blocks in there is Yoga Design Lab has I can't remember if it's Hugger Mugger or Yoga Design Lab, but it's one of the two, has a rather large carry bag for specifically yoga props. However, I do think there's lots of room for innovation in mobile yoga storage, and we are on it.
Awesome. We had a comment. Just want to thank you, Brienne, for such a wonderful presentation. Lots of food for thought.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate the
Yeah.
feedback.
Looks like we have a few more questions and we have a little bit of time. You mentioned detox plants. Do you recommend any certain kinds?
Yes, yes, yes. Air purifying plants. So the peace lily that's the one that I bought most recently for the first time. I don't know why I had avoided the peace lily. What a beautiful plant. Very powerful too. The spider plant, isn't that the most ubiquitous house plant you can think of? And they create babies like it's going out of style. So you really just buy one and then you end up with 30 eventually anyway. And you can imagine that your air is becoming more and more pure with each baby. And then, something else that is interesting to consider is EMFs. We didn't really discuss electromagnetic fields and how that is impactful to wellness. But that is definitely something to consider. And cacti have been known to help block EMFs. So tend to cluster all my cacti around my modem and around my office space where I keep my spider plants, my peace lily, philodendrons in the bathroom and living room spaces.
Awesome. Any suggestions for 24/7 studios? Thank you.
Wow. So 24/7 studios, first off, you are being incredibly sustainable just by having a building that is operating 24/7. That is, most buildings, most businesses have that off time and the building is just kind of sitting there vacant. So having the ability to kind of maintain that energy is very important that you look into wellness design strategies so that you can continue that energy in a responsible way. So a 24/7 studio, it depends where you are in the process. Is this an existing studio? Is this a new studio you're developing? But I would definitely have some strategies. So connect with me after this webinar and we can talk about how best to make sure that that business is performing sustainably given you know, its power.
Awesome. And we have another question. What material do you advise for yoga blocks?
Yeah, good question. So yoga blocks. EVA foam is the main one, right? That we see everywhere, our little foam yoga blocks. And let's just all take a minute and remember what that feels like. Like it's kind of cringe, right? Like just touching that foam, it's a little bit nails on the chalkboard, like not a lovely experience. The only benefit to the EVA foam block is the lightness, right? So it works out really well and the squishiness in times where you need that give or you really need it to be light. You're working with communities or people who um, are unable to lift heavier objects. But if you're just in this natural realm of yoga ditch those blocks, actually use them in an area outside that's not going to be off-gassing. Don't throw them out. Reuse them somewhere. And then purchase yourself some wood blocks or cork blocks. Not only do they feel so much better on the hand, the actual feel of the material, but they're a little bit heavier, which I find more supportive in 90% of my yoga practice. And you can get into certain postures that you just can't get into with the foam ones, like some myofascial work that you can get with the harder objects. But yes, we carry what I think is the world's most sustainable yoga block on the planet on our website, Mache, heymache.com. And that is made of balsa wood. So it's reclaimed balsa wood trees from Nicaragua that have fallen from hurricane damage. They have over 300 days of rain there a year. Insane. So these trees just shoot up super fast and they grow big but fast. And so they're relatively weak, and these hurricanes come in and destroy the trees. Previously, they've just rotted there each cycle. And then, new trees come and the cycle repeats. We worked with a nonprofit agency in Nicaragua to sequester that material and turn it into balsa wood yoga blocks that were then finished with beeswax from local apiary societies in Nicaragua. So it is 100% the most sustainable yoga block you can get, and it feels incredible. It's not heavy. It's about the same weight as a cork block. It has a really smooth finish with that beeswax, which it doesn't even have an odor to it, but it has a really beautiful sheen.
Awesome. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the Q&A. Thank you so much, Brienne. Thank you to everyone for being here today. One more reminder that the recording will be sent to you by tomorrow via email, along with the exclusive discounts that you're getting through attending this webinar. So that's going to be the 20% off Mache for the sustainable yoga storage. And then you also get the 50% off the design services for a limited time as well. So that will be included along with her contact information and the website.
Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I really appreciated all those amazing questions and comments. And thanks again, Shannon.
Thank you so much, Brienne. Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.